Hello and welcome to my Heart Standard on another sunny day. And I'm Craig Cairns, and once again I am joined by the editor, Joel Sked, who has come in on his day off to help us out today. How are you doing, Joel?
Good. Yes, as we were speaking off air, I've just been getting lots of little tasks done that I've been putting off or needing to do, such as going to see my parents and putting a washing out. So,
what a day for it. I have
know.
been working in the sun, and I think I will be going for a pint shortly after this is done. We are going to talk about the latest goings on in the Hearts' hunt for a new head coach. We're going to look ahead to the game against Motherwell tomorrow. Before we do that, I will just say that Heart Standard is brought to you by S1 Jobs. If it's time to hand in your transfer request, then head over to S1 Jobs and upload your CV today. With thousands of jobs across Edinburgh and the surrounding area, you'll find the one at S1 Jobs. Start your search today. The Hearts are continuing their search for a new head coach. Interest in McInnes rumoured to have cooled. Derek McInnes, another candidate, didn't take his club's pre-match press conference on Wednesday. It's not a sure sign of anything, but it shows that he didn't want to, possibly shows that he didn't want to answer questions about it. Do you want to kind of bring us up to date on the latest from what you understand, please, Joe?
Yeah, so I suppose I really need to stop saying I suppose. It's one of those quirks that I've just got into the habit of, or really noticed.
We've all got them.
Yeah, so apologies when you hear that. Maybe a drinking game and you'll be steaming by the time you finish listening to this. But I think it's pertinent to go back to yesterday. There was a lot of speculation on social media around Derek McInnes. As far as I'm aware, nothing's like there's no confirmation of anything. I believe, and also I think the record reported last night that there's going to be a meeting, like a board meeting tomorrow before the Motherwell game in the morning, and I think that's the next big step for the head coach search. So I think that'll be a key in going from there and basically deciding who is the number one target and then making the move from that. The good thing is there's no massive rush. I know selfishly we're keen for nothing to happen next week because it's a 3-game week and it just adds to what would be a hectic week anyway. But that's just from a completely selfish point of view. But Hearts are safe. There's a wee bit of breathing space to get to make sure they get the right candidate. By all accounts, like Derek McInnes is very much the favourite. Colin Anderson asks here, do you think it will be McInnes or a foreign coach? I would out of the two, I would definitely say McInnes out of the two. But nothing's. I don't believe anything's rubber stamped, and it's just a case of waiting and seeing. And like I said, apparent board meeting tomorrow would be the big one driving the next step forward.
And of course, Derek McInnes is going to have to take a game this weekend, so he won't be able to avoid questions there. So it'll be interesting to see what comments we get, if any, on that. But he'll probably just stonewall it, like most managers do in that situation.
Yeah, and I do think that's tomorrow's important because if Kilmarnock win, I think are they home to Dundee, if I remember correctly. So if they're home to Dundee. So
they've certainly got a couple of results recently which have made their situation look a lot better when it was.
Yeah, I think they're one away. They're one win away from securing. Right. I think just one win, maybe even a draw, but one win away from securing, making sure that they don't get dragged into the 11th spot. So that could be key and taking things forwards as well. If Kilmarnock win, then there's the pressure of Kilmarnock, and then everyone can start going forward.
Let's just say, for argument's sake, it is going to be McInnes, and just take what we saw. You alluded to it earlier on social media as some sort of barometer. I think it's fair to say, with most things, most issues concerning Hearts fans these days, the response has been a bit mixed.
Yeah, I think the response is exactly what I expected the response to be. I was well aware that
You probably had the caveat that I'm purely going off like the internet, really.
absolutely. But I think that was always going to be the case when I wrote the piece. Was it last week or the week before about why a Scottish Hearts probably should go down the route of a Scottish candidate, just because there's a few solid candidates, and then basically expressing the preference or belief that McInnes was a standout candidate. I was very, very much aware that when putting that out, there would be not blowback, but people would understandably disagree. And a lot of people said they understood my point but disagreed, which is great. Other people just flat outly disagreed, and then there were some who kind of was like, "Oh, we're kind of on the fence," and then it came round, and I just felt, I think whatever candidate that was from Scottish football was not going to have a unifying effect. I think that was always going to be the case with McInnes. A lot of people look at the way it ended at Aberdeen. I would say that he probably stayed there a wee bit too long, and then they view this season what he's like. Kilmarnock went from 4th to now trying to get as high up the bottom 6 as possible, and then there's question marks around his style of play. I've got nothing. I don't mind his style of play, the style of play which I believe he would bring to Hearts is much more like the style of play Aberdeen had in those strong periods, and it was a lot of guile in midfield, a lot of width, a lot of threat from wide areas, and a lot of like balls in the box.
Yeah,
and I think that's
there was a few different incarnations of the team, wasn't there? There was his back three team. There were times where he went a bit more direct to the likes of Cosgrove, but then you're right. There were the team I think you're talking about there is the one that had McLean and Hayes in it, and when Shinnie was moved into midfield and that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the. If I would say, is case study the right kind of the right term for this? But
it's
yeah,
a similar level of club.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's the that's a view on it, and he's actually coming into a club who I think are further ahead than that Aberdeen were back then, and with greater ambition and with like Jamestown behind it. Totally get it. Thomas says here, McInnes would be a total underwhelming appointment, in my opinion. Surely we should be setting our sights bigger than him.
Can I just kind of come in on that? Because there's something I was going to say anyway. I mean, I really wasn't sure. I did a shift where Critchley was sacked and then I was off for a week, basically. So I switched off. So I didn't really think about it for a while either. And then I kind of came back to, like you had written about, I think by that point they'd said they wanted a Scottish experience or something like that. But you'd written about McInnes and that kind of thing. And thinking about it, that's when I became a bit more, I thought to myself, well, I think going down the Scottish route's probably the best thing for now, at least, because I think what Hearts don't need is another experiment. And I think when you go down either the route that we just went down or even someone like Hogmo, who hasn't got off to a great start, in fact, quite a bad start at Molde, you're veering more into the realms of experimentation when you're doing that.
More of a risk, yeah.
Exactly. And I think Hearts need to go with a more low risk. I get that that's going to come with it, an underwhelming appointment after what a lot of people called an underwhelming appointment the last time. But yeah, I don't know what you think about that. But once I kind of gathered my thoughts and came back, I just thought, I mean, I don't want to go for an experiment right now. I'd kind of like someone who would guarantee a certain level. And let's be honest, I mean, I think McInnes would guarantee us above just a certain base level. I think he would get us competing for Europe again.
I would I totally get it that people want people would like a sexier name, but I look at McInnes' track record. Gone into St Johnstone, took them to Championship to the Premiership, went into Aberdeen, took them from the bottom 6 to 7 or 8 consecutive European finishes, went into Kilmarnock, took them from the Championship to the Premiership, then consolidation to Europe, and then this has been a disappointing season. But I think that's always more likely at Kilmarnock than it is at Hearts. The Hearts have had this season.
Good managers just have bad seasons as well.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
Sometimes happens.
You look at his CV, and I think it's a really good CV. And having started to speak to people who have worked with McInnes and trying to get an idea from them, one thing that stands out is he leads a culture aspect of it. He makes a couple of things that I got told, whereas hugely personable, wants everyone, not just the players, wants the whole staff to come along on the journey with him. He wants everyone to feel part of it, and he makes the clubs he goes into an enjoyable place for people to come. So that's one of his biggest strengths, is that man management. And I just think he is the most sensible appointment.
I think you just kind of related to what you've said there. I think McInnes probably has the things that Critchley lacked that fans want. I mean, he may not be perfect across the board, McInnes, but I think he has those aspects that you were just describing there that people felt were missing under Critchley. And I think that he's the kind of guy that won't see Hibs as just another game. And this big game thing that was hanging over Critchley, I can't see McInnes falling into that same kind of thing.
I would, when I've been talking to pals,
though he did have that over Aberdeen to an extent.
Yeah. When I've talking to pals and just other folk about McInnes, the two of my key selling points is Hearts would finally win at Pittodrie, and they would. I think Hearts would have a much better record against in the derby than in certainly recent years. I'll bring in a few comments before we move on. So let's talk tech. Makes a good point. Phil McInnes would need to make a lot of concessions to become the new boss. Can't see the club changing their planned approach in terms of Jamestown's style of play for McInnes. So I think any manager coming in would have to make concessions for Jamestown just because of the way it's operating, because Jamestown very much doing all the recruitment, and then it's a case of yay or nay to bring them in. It's the style of play is interesting because I am looking forward to, kind of eager to chat or hear from Graham Jones, because he spoke at the Foundation Hearts event about conversations with Andy Webster, Shelley Kerr, Neil Critchley when he was here about a style of play for Hearts, and I would like to see how McInnes comes in and impacts that, and the influence there, and what the idea is going forward. So without having any answers to this, I think that's certainly one to keep an eye on.
Any other questions before we kind of move on to tomorrow's match?
Yes, or just on the So I would imagine if we get McInnes, it would boost the chance of Darnay Armstrong going to us as well. I'm Geos123. So Armstrong's out of contract in summer. He had strong interest, he said, from Hearts in January. He has interest from around Europe. But yeah, I would say that would open up a possibility. I would also add Shankland to that. And I think the chances of Shankland keeping increasing. I would say that McInnes would want to keep Shankland, is the best way to put it.
It would then come down to what the club and Shankland can agree and how far apart they are. No, given the history of contract negotiations, I think it would be that rather than the manager just green lighting it, I would imagine.
And where else have we got? Chris says not good enough for Aberdeen, but the best man for Hearts. I don't think it was a case he was not good enough for Aberdeen. He was there for
a long time. This is another thing. Hearts are now looking for their second manager in 6 months, and want a bit of stability. I don't know, what is it, 6 managers in 7 years or something like that. Derek McInnes has spent an average of 4 years at the 4 clubs he's managed. And so Hearts, and Aberdeen was the longest of those. He built a number of sides at Aberdeen, and yes, he fell short. Some of that was against Brendan Rodgers' invincible Celtic, though. And it got stale towards the end. They didn't score for 8 games before he left or something like that. It came to a natural conclusion, but I don't think it's correct to say he wasn't good enough for Aberdeen.
Yeah, I just think it ran its course after a very successful period. I was on. I remember back towards his final 2 seasons. It did get stale. I don't think they were great to watch, and it just felt like it was the natural time to move on. Jim Hiddleston, would McInnes work with the sport director? Would he not want full control? That's something that he'll do for the first time. I think working with Graham Jones. I think the full control aspect, it might be overblown. I think he'll enjoy having some responsibilities taken away from him and allowing him to concentrate on being a head coach. So
and having a better scouting system than he's worked with before.
Yeah, exactly. And maybe have a nicer work-life balance. Who knows? We all want that. And I'll just go through these quickly just because we'll get on to talking about the game on Saturday. Darren Ross, do you think if McInnes will bring his current staff with him, or do you think he'll get a new assistant and staff for Hearts? I would imagine he would like to bring in at least one person, one member of his coaching staff. I would expect Liam Fox to be stay part of it, because I think I know this is the case at Union Saint-Gilloise. They like a continuation within the backroom staff. They don't like getting rid of a head coach and all these coaches and then bringing everyone. They want someone there to.
That's what Hearts have tried to do over the many years.
And Mike Lewis says, would love Bobby Wills to join if Derek comes. He is heading to Swansea, it seems like. And I'll just check the live comments.
But on the assistant manager thing, Tony Docherty might be available soon, so you never.
Yeah. A lot of McInnes. I'll come back. I'll read out some comments about McInnes at the end. We'll move on to chatting about the game on Saturday against Motherwell.
And there's not a huge amount to talk about because there's not really much on the line for both teams. Motherwell are safe, I believe. Hearts are all but safe. So I suppose the main thing that we should speak about is the team news and who's going to start. Devlin is back after being ill last week and missing out in the game. Oh. If you look at Hearts' lineups against first 2 matches of Liam Fox's interim spell, both against Ross County, there were 8 players who were the same, both starting 11s. Devlin was one of the ones that was in that one back in September, but didn't play last week because he was unavailable. Do you think he coming back means Liam Fox might make a change in that midfield? Didn't mean to put you on the spot, sorry.
No. That's a really good question. It's a good question because I think that's probably the biggest question. I think it's whether it's. I think it depends on the formation. If it's 4-3-3, I agree with what you put up on the site, and I think he'll go with Spittle and Grant either side of Benny. But if he thinks he wants to get another attacker in and goes with maybe Cabangu or Wilson to play up front with Shankland, if he wants to go with kind of 2 forwards at home, then I could see both Spittle and Grant dropping out and Devlin coming back in and playing as part of the kind of double pivot. So that's how I'm feeling on it. So the lineup you put up on the predicted lineup on the site, I would agree with if it's a 4-3-3.
Well, that's interesting because that was the other thing I was going to come on to. The only other possible change, and I did write this as well, is that being at home and expected to be the team that takes the game to the opposition. Motherwell just completely sat in the last time they were at Tynecastle. That could mean another striker coming in. James Wilson and Elton Cabangu both were on the bench last week. Wilson was just a sort of time-wasting substitute towards the end, I think. That could be another change, but at the same time, you look at the front three and how it performed last week up against another back three. You'd maybe want to stick with that and go with the same again.
Yeah, and it's a fact that Fox stressed the need to get speed in the team higher up the pitch. Vargas and Forrest have had their moments this season, and good and bad in terms of they've drawn the ire of the crowd, and they've also contributed with goals or assists. Maybe not as many as last season, or certainly not as many as we all hoped and expected from this season. I would like to still I suppose that's something that we might see a lot of, and I think Hearts fans want to see, is playing with width and wingers, and I don't think Fox will change that, and I think that's an important thing from Fox. So while Spittle and Penrice have had a really good relationship, I think he will maintain the wide attackers to kind of stretch Motherwell. Motherwell play with a back three as well, and it showed how well it worked against Ross County last week, and I would imagine he would want to stay with the same. Do you want me to bring in? Do you want to bring in? Do you want me to bring in questions, or do you want to fire some other stuff across?
Just one last thing before we do move on to those questions about the game. You asked about Barry Mackay, and
I didn't ask about Barry Mackay.
Oh, sorry, he was asked about Barry Mackay.
Yeah, he was asked. I asked about Harry Milne, but someone else asked about Barry Mackay.
Another interesting one, because he played against Minsk over in Azerbaijan. He started that game, and
his last start, I think.
Was it right? So I didn't quite look at it, but he'd fallen out. He'd started the first game of the season and then sort of fallen out the team by that point as well. So it was interesting that Fox restored him so quickly in that game and then brought him out of the wilderness and onto the bench. So we could see Barry Mackay between now and the end of the season on the pitch again. Not that I think it means that he's going to be hanging around after the summer.
No, it was. Yeah, I thought Fox's comments were really interesting, just with terms of deciding on training, and also the need for a goal or a moment of magic. And thankfully, we didn't need that up at Dingwall, because kind of Shankland and the rest took care of that. I still would be surprised if we saw him off the bench. I think he won't be. He could potentially still be on the bench, but whether he makes that next step to play, I think will depend on the game. But yeah, I thought that was probably the most surprising addition, or surprising inclusion, I should say, against Ross County. This is going to be a podcast in itself and something I'm going to write. But remembering Barry Mackay's, how he will be remembered, I know by far what most fans will say to that. But yeah, he's a very interesting one. Unfortunately, it's just kind of petered out his career at Hearts. So I'll bring in some comments. Brian Whiteman asked, play Danda instead of Grant. Danda came off the bench in Ross County. What do you make of that, Craig?
I also remember being at Ross Matthews' testimonial earlier in the season, and he played basically where Grant played last week. He played on the right side of a midfield three, I'm pretty sure. And then was there not a game soon after that where he was either moved in there or he played there again? I can't remember. But yeah, Danda's a weird one. I mean, I just like what's going through my mind at the moment is when he came on against Dundee when we were desperate for a goal and he just passed the ball out the park. I'm sure you had your head down writing at that point. He just passed the ball straight out the park, and I feel for Danda a bit because he's just had such a turbulent time in terms of selection and being played in a position he's never been played in his position. And I feel like to bring him in for Grant, unless you're then going to switch that to a 4-2-3-1 like you're talking about, you'd probably have to have someone other than Spittle and the other six there. Yeah, I'm not sure. I think we should maybe stop trying to shoehorn Danda into places where he's not comfortable.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a wider point for the season. I've seen a couple of guys talking about Xander Carton as a number 10, but this season we've had Blair Spittle come in, who thrived as a number 10 last season. Yandanda come in, who was his best position as a number 10, and then Khartoum, who a lot of people have used his best position as number 10. I don't think
we played a number 9 there.
Yeah, I don't think we've seen anyone in the number 10. So it does feel like it feels like these 3 games, and I suppose I'll bring in Darren Ross's comment about any B team players. I think these 3 games are like a final, like a conclusion of the season rather than kind of looking ahead to next season in terms of players, because there's going to be an overhaul in the squad. A lot of the guys we've talked about likely won't be here. And then to answer Darren's question, any B team players to maybe get game time. They've still been training, but the fact that none were on the bench up at Ross County, I know the dynamic of the game was different. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure any will make the step to play, and I think the size of the squad, Liam Fox spoke about it. He's had to make some difficult decisions in terms of leaving guys out the squad. That there's not space for them, and I suppose actually you can make a point that the guys who aren't in the future next year, do you even bother playing with them and then bring in youngsters? I think that's a fair point, because you've got, for example, Callum Sandilands came back from Montrose, so he'd be ready to go, and he's obviously highly rated. So I would like to see someone involved, but I doubt it. Is my best way to answer that.
You did say what you could see. You mentioned the young keeper warming up last week. You might get something like that, or you could get a couple in the last game of the season or something like that go on the bench at the expense of, as you're saying, people who clearly don't have a future at the club or something like that. But yeah, I don't know. I wonder whether I think from what you following on from what you said there, definitely I think Fox wouldn't have wanted to mess about with that last week, given the not the magnitude of the game, but the potential repercussions if Hearts had lost that game. Motherwell, he may view the same, given that it's not quite done yet as well. But after that, yeah, I think there's a chance that if not game time, you might see a couple on the bench or something like that. But it would more likely be somebody like Callum Sandilands. It's a good point about him, let him coming, because he's one of the guys that would have been on the bench and has been on the bench this season in Europe and things like that.
Yeah.
He's one of the ones that you would have seen, whereas the other ones, the rest of the B team players are guys that have just been promoted from the under 18s pretty much. It's pretty much a team that's just been promoted from the under 18s.
Yeah, exactly. And I just... like tomorrow, ideally, it's going to be lovely weather. As
it's a nightmare to work in.
Yeah, I think we'll see some goals tomorrow. Shackles are off, and yeah, just go attacking formation. Maybe ideally bring on a couple of youngsters. Like I said, I doubt that will be the case. But last 3 o'clock game on a Saturday at Tynecastle, what can possibly go wrong? Do you want me to finish up, unless you have any questions, just bring in a few comments again about McInnes?
Exactly what I was going to suggest. Let's go through another few comments and then we can wrap it up.
Friends Tack 7 says 4-2-3-1 again, bring in 2 proper wingers and give Shankland a contract. That's what he wants to see, and wingers are definitely something that the club are looking at for next season. Darren Ross says, honestly, think most Hearts fans just want a team that gives 100%, moves the ball quickly and wins more than it loses. It's a really good point. And I think Hearts fans are really demanding, and they should be. But also, I think we as Hearts fans are actually really easy to please. And I think Darren sums up what most Hearts fans are looking for. I know that's what I want. Ball going in the box. Just put it in the box. That's fine.
Everybody enjoys winning football, regardless of how it's done. But there are... It's like, but if you have somebody like Shaba, who goes out to win a game, win every game 1-0, yes, that's good for a while, but as soon as the results start to dry up, that's when people turn quicker because there's no entertainment. The football's turgid. You're not even trying to win a game. So, yes, I think a lot of that's true. I think there's a balance to be had. I think there's ways to win football matches, to borrow a cliche. Any other comments?
Yeah. I'll just there's a mix. So I'd rather than just being all pro McInnes. Ian Pearson says with Bloom's investment, we should be aiming higher than McInnes.
Can I say something quickly on that?
Yeah, of course.
I don't know if we're repeating ourselves. It's hard to remember what we've said to each other here and what we've said off air. But they weren't always the sexiest appointments at Brighton, to take that example as well. And I think you've mentioned in the past about the Union Saint-Gilloise looking within Belgium and I know Belgium has a bit of a better footballing pedigree than Scotland, but Brighton went down the route of a few experimental-ish appointments and they didn't quite work out, and then they got Houghton to kind of get them to a base level, and then they kicked on from there. And you look who they're appointing children essentially to run their teams now. So we've got that to look forward to. Cathro Mark too.
Ross McLean says, if he signs, I'll not be renewing, to be honest. This is absolutely no guarantees here. He's gone from Aberdeen to St Johnstone to Kilmarnock, hardly stepping up there. But he's actually, there's absolutely no guarantees with any manager, but he went from St Johnstone to Aberdeen then to Kelly. But there
are no guarantees at all. There are no guarantees within Hearts' budget. And I think, go back to what I said earlier, they're going for, I think they're trying to minimise the risks this time, and that's what this is. Although I think that's doing McInnes a little bit of a disservice. I think he's a bit better than a low risk appointment.
Ian W says, put it this way, I can't see us finishing bottom 6 with McInnes. I know we are worth much more than that, but right now we really need stability and a reduction of risk.
Aberdeen were constantly in the bottom 6 until McInnes came along, and then they were constantly in the top 6.
Matty Cahey says Del Boy is exactly what the club need just now, a proper manager with loads of experience in this league. The team will be much more organised, harder to beat, and big and physical. Yes. Me and Matty K singing off the same hymn sheet. So yeah, I thought that would give a good barometer of like the fan feeling. There's a mix of views on that, and that's, I think, replicated across the support. Suppose the big thing is is how he, if again, hypothetically, if he comes in and how he does, and that's where he'll be judged. But I do think he will come in, and I think he will put a type of formation and style that fans will resonate to, and then I think he'll say a lot of the right things as well. I think he'll Hearts fans be taken by what he says and what he wants from the team. And I suppose the final thing is Steve McKinley rules out Yogi Hughes. He met him down at Porty Beach today. He says he isn't interested in the job. Good to know.
Just before we go, I'll bring in one more comment from Matty K. He says, we can't end 11th unless there's like a 25 goal swing. Totally right. I said there's still a chance, but Matty K is completely right. There's only a very, very slim chance. I looked at it earlier in the week, and Dundee would have to win one of their games like 20-0 or something like that, and it not be Ross County or something like that. I can't remember. It'd have to be a specific game that they won by that margin as well. So I totally agree. It's not happening. Any other business before we get out of here, Joe?
No. Liverpool Hearts asks to avoid hassle, a yes or no answer would be grand. Are you aware Hearts wanting to sign Bobby Oates in January? I am not aware of that, so maybe try and find out if that's the case. But at the moment, no, I'm not aware of that. But yeah, there we go.
Unfortunately, that if that's true, he has got away. He would have been a nice sign-in to have. I would have been excited by that, but can't really argue with them going down to Swansea with the reputation that they've had for bringing through players. Right, let's get out of here.
Yeah, I was just going to say, on that 25 goal swing, it's like this season has been difficult and strained and strange. But even that, I think, is out with the possibility of actually happening. So let's not even think about that.
Let's not think about that. Please, everybody, go to heartstandard.co.uk where you can plenty of content regarding Hearts. We will have stuff going up after the game this weekend. We will also be back here with another video after that game. Thanks to everybody for their comments. Sorry we didn't get to them all. We just have an increasing amount every video we do now. Enjoy the game when it comes, and we'll speak to you all soon.